Okay, so welcome back to our class, and for this third video, we will now talk about dimensions and units. What are our outcomes for this lesson? So first, we should understand primary and secondary dimensions. And what is dimension? We should also understand the different units used in this subject. And also, we will know some techniques on solving problems to make it a lot easier for you. Okay? So, let's dive in. So, what are dimensions? Actually, dimension is just basically means it is the measurable extent of some kind. So, we will talk about that later on para mas masabtan anato unsa nang dimension. Okay? And actually, it actually means that also it is the quantity you assigned to an object. Okay? So there are two classifications of dimensions. We have, again, I said it on our outcomes, we have primary dimensions and secondary dimensions. So what are the difference of these two? So first, let us talk about primary dimensions. Primary dimensions are also known as the fundamental dimensions. When you say fundamental dimensions, sila ang origin. Wala sila gi-based sa other nga mga origins. Okay? So, unsa examples anang primary dimension? These are mass, length, time, temperature, electric current, amount of light, and amount of matter. So actually, those 7 are the fundamental primary dimensions. And those 7 are the only primary dimensions available. Wala na ilain yung mga primary dimensions. Mao lang jud to ang 7 ka buok. Okay? Ano man, ang mass. Say for example, mass. Naada tayo ma-derive nga kuan anang mass. Wala. Because that is a primary dimension. Okay? So another classification of dimension is your secondary dimension. And secondary dimension actually is also known as your derived dimensions. So these dimensions are derived from the primary dimension. So you have the secondary dimension force. And karon, makibaw na siguro mo usang force that is actually newtons. Ang unit sa force is newtons and that is equal to kilogram meters per second squared. So kani atong force is a secondary dimension. Ano man? Because it is derived on 1, 2, and 3 primary dimension. So kilogram is a dimension of mass, meters is a dimension of length, and seconds is a dimension of time. So force is derived from 3 primary dimensions. So mao nang gitawag na siya og secondary dimensions. And also we have some other secondary dimensions that probably ganahan mo kibaw. We have acceleration. Unsa unit sa acceleration? That is meters per second squared. So it is derived from 2 primary dimensions. You have pressure. No, makibaw ra mo unsa nang pressure, pero ato isulti kibaw sa whiteboard. Pressure is newtons per meter squared, or that is kilograms meter per second squared over meter squared. So it is derived from 1, 2, and 3 primary dimensions. Power. Unsa man po ng power? So, power, unsa unit sa power? Joules per second. Unsa man po ng joules? That is newton meter per second. Ang joules is actually newton meter and then over second. So kung ato pa nabungkagon, kilogram meter per second squared, meter per second. So, still, it is derived from 1, 2, and 3 primary dimensions. So, all those I've said are secondary dimensions. So, they are based from the primary dimensions. Understood? Sayo na jud kayo ito ha, klaro na jud kayo ito nga pagka-jaw-jaw na ko. So, now, let us talk about units. Ano sa ganyan ng units? That is actually the magnitude assigned to your dimensions. So, there are two units that is mostly used in the world today. Una is the SI unit, or that actually means the Ley System International de Unitis. Ang button sa pagbasa ana pero mao nang iyang tawag. Okay? So, unsa man na sila? Unsa man ang mga units ng SI? I will just show it to you later on. And we also have your English units. So, ang English units, usually, ang gitawag po ani siya, United States Customary System. Okay? So, this is mostly used in the US. And on the rest of the countries around US, ang ilang gigamit is ang SI. I don't know nga nung nagpalahi ang US, but yes, they're weird, but let's just deal with it. Okay? Here is a table of the difference of the SI and the English units. So as you can see, for the dimension of length, you have in the SI meters. For the English, you have feet. For time, you have in SI seconds, and for the English, you have second as well. For mass, you have kilograms. For the US, you have slug. And for the force, you have newtons. And for US customary, you have pounds. Okay? So take note that your slug is a mass, and it is actually derived from your force of pounds. Because unsa man the unit sa slug, the unit of slug is pound second squared per feet. Okay? So, pound second squared per feet, gibali lang ang feet per second squared, which is ang acceleration, and ang pound, which is unit of force, then you have the mass of slug. But slug is actually, wala na kaya na siya gigamit karon kay murag old pa na nga unit. So, ang gigamit karon is pound mass and pound force. Libog ang English, no? I don't care. Pahala na sila. So, in this course, we will always be using SI units. Ano man, kay daghan siya mga, nindot siya gamiton kay mas broad ang iyang application, and then daghan siya mga rules. Okay? So, we will talk about the rules that is used in your SI units. Let us first talk about the prefixes. Kano sa man gamiton ng prefix? Prefix. When we talk about very large or very small numbers, we usually use prefixes. So what are prefixes? It represents a multiple or submultiple of a unit, which is usually, kung applied nato, it moves to a decimal point to every third place. I have here a table of prefix, and kung a number times 10 to the power of 9, you call it giga. 10 to the power of 6, mega. 10 to the power of 3, kilo. Okay? So, dito ta sa lower. 10 to the power of negative 3, milli. 10 to the power of negative 6, micro. And 10 to the power of negative 9, nano. Okay? Take note, ana. Okay? Importante na. What are the rules that we have to take note when we are talking about prefixes? Okay? Kay usahay, kung masayop na to butang ang prefix, usually, ma-misinterpret na nato. We have these rules that you have to take note when you are going to deal with prefixes. Okay? So, rule number 1. Quantities with several units must be separated by a dot. Okay? So, for example, you have meters and naka-unit nga meters second. Okay? So, di ba mauni ang unit nato sa meter and mauni ang unit nato sa second. Dili na siya pwede itapad. Ano man? Kay ma-misinterpret na siya as millisecond. So, ang dapat nato buhaton kung duha na siya ka-separate nga units, ang ato buhaton is meter dot second. Dili siya pwede itapad kay ma-misinterpret na to. Take note, again, kung magtapad ang mga units, we should always separate it with a dot. Okay? Rule number 2. Exponential power of a unit having a prefix refers both the unit and the prefix. So say for example, you have a unit of micronewton squared. So kung mayroon kag micronewton squared, dili ang newton ra ana ang naka-square. Take note, ang naka-square ana is ang micronewton mismo. This is wrong and this is correct. So ing ana pag-apply og prefix when you are dealing with exponents. Okay? So, kanipod, another example. Millimeter squared. So, dili ang meter ang nag-square, ha? But ang millimeter squared. Ang pasabotan ng millimeter squared, so, nag-square ka og millimeter and millimeter on sides. Okay? So, mao na ang atong pasabot sa exponents when using with prefix. Okay. Rule number 3. Avoid the use of prefixes in the denominator of composite units. Say, for example, you have Newton per millimeter. This is wrong. Okay, good siya, pero technically, when you apply this rule, this is wrong. Why? Dapat meter ang atong denominator. Walay prefix. Di ni siya pwede. Walay prefix ang atong denominator dapat. Ang sakto buhaton is to make it kilonewton per meter. Okay? These are same units but mao ni ang sakto kay dapat again ang atong denominator should have no prefix. Okay? And last, rule number 4. During calculations, represent the numbers in terms of their base units by converting all prefixes to the power of 10. And the result should be expressed on a single prefix. So may pasabot ana. Technique ni to solve problem. Because why? Say for example, you are multiplying 50 kilonewtons by 60 millimeters. Okay? So, ato daw i-multiply ang 50 kilonewtons with 60 millimeters. So, to easily analyze this kind of problem, you should first bungkag, tanggala ang mga prefixes ani and then express them in the terms of their powers of chuchu. For example, kaning 50. 50 times 10 to the power of, unsa man ang kilo? 3 newtons. Okay? And also, kaning 60. 60 times 10 to the power of negative 3. Di ba? Kaya millimeters, so meters. So, nga na atong baton. Kay, ano man, masayo ni analyze kung naa sila sa ilang mga base units without using prefixes. Okay, when you put prefixes on solving problems, it would be a lot harder. Okay? So the answer of this one is actually 3 times 10 to the power of 3 Newton meter. And, unsa to giingon sa atong rule? dapat sa atong last answer, naka-prefix na siya. So, unsay answer ani? 3 kilonewton meter. So, mo na atong answer. Okay, so yung ana lang. So, to make it easier for you to solve this kind of problem, then it is advisable for you to remove all the prefix and put the prefix back when you arrive on your final answer. Now, let us have some rules when solving your problem. It is for the advantage of me, sa ako pag-check, and it is an advantage for you as well para makapractice mo. Okay. When doing mathematical equations, it is very important to follow the rules in order to make calculations a lot easier. Okay? And taking note of these rules will help you be organized and help you detect corrections when you work through with your calculations. Nagbasa ko, okay? So, first na itong rule. You should be familiar of the word dimensional homogeneity. When you say dimensional homogeneity, it actually means that every terms in an equation must be dimensionally homogeneous, or it should be expressed in the same units. So for example, I have this very common equation na atong gigamit sa physics. S final is equal to S initial plus VOT minus 1/2 AT squared. I think you are familiar with this equation. So, all of these terms here are dimensionally homogeneous. Unsa may atong unit aning atong position. This is in meters. You have this initial position which has the unit of meters. And you have velocity times time. Unsa man na atong velocity times time? Unsa ay atong unit sa velocity? Meters per second. And then you multiply og time which is second. So na-cancel ang second. So this is just meters as well. And this last one, so constant, wa ni siya unit. Acceleration, unsa unit sa atong acceleration? Meters per second squared. And multiplied by time, which is squared as well. So cancel ang time, and again, this also has a unit of meters. So all these terms in this equation are dimensionally homogeneous. Okay? Each unit in this equation is in meters. Each term in this equation is in meters. Okay? So I hope na-gets na ninyo. Now, kung sa inyong pag-solve, naka-figure out mo nga, ang usa ka term is meter second. Unsa may imong masulti ana? Ang imong solution is wrong. Okay? Diretso na kadayon mo conclude nga imong solution is wrong kung naay usa ka term nga dili ka pareha og dimension sa uban nga term. Take note, ha? So, kung naay musibag, naay sayop sa imong solution. And you better check your solution kung unsa ang sayop. Okay, di ba? Diha man ta hanas mangita tag sayop. Okay. So, for significant figures, I guess you already are familiar with significant figures, right? And in this course, sa atong subject, we will always round off our answers to three significant figures. So for example, you have an answer sa imong force nga 987,654,321 newtons. Now, if I say that this should be expressed in three significant figures, what are you going to do? 9, it should be 987 987 times 10 to the power of 6 newtons. And since niingon man ko sa ako rule kaganiha nga dapat ibutang prefix, so 987 mega newtons. Nga lang. Okay? So, express it in 3 significant figures and then voila. Have it there. Or, sakto po ni 0.987 giganewtons. I still will accept that kind of answer. Understood? Nga lang. Okay, so now, let's have an example here. Let us convert 300 pounds second and 52 slug per feet to their appropriate SI units. So, unsa man ni siya? Unsay appropriate nga SI unit aning pound second? Dapat ato siya convert into Newton second. Okay? So, unsa man na? Unsa man nato pa-convert? 300 pound second. So, we don't have to convert second into SI because they are the same. So, 1 pound, we already know that 1 pound is equal to, makita na sa internet, 4.448 newtons. Okay? So, cancel ang pound, unit of pound. Ang mabili na lang is, ato i-calculate, answer is 1334.4 newtons second. Pero di ba, naiyon ko sa rule kaganihan nga dapat 3 significant figures. So, 1.33 times 10 to the power of 3 newtons second. Or 1.33 kilonewtons second. Diba? Naalam ko sa yun. We also have 52 slug per cubic feet. So, unsa man ning slug, you should convert it into mass kilograms. Unsa man ning feet, ato siya i-convert into meters cube. So, ato siya i-convert tung ingana. So, first, 52 slug per feet times, ito say, convert ang slug into kilograms. So, we all know that 1 slug is equal to 14.59 kilograms. And 1 feet is equal to 0.3048 meters. Cancel ang slug, cancel ang feet. Mabilin, kilogram per meter. But take note, naka-cube da ini. So, unsa man ito buhaton? Ato ni cube diri para mo feet cube per meter cube. So, calculate na to. So, the answer is 26,792.58. This is in kilograms per cubic meter. And, apply the rule, 26.8 times 10 to the power of 3 kilograms per meter cube, or simply 26.8 megagrams per cubic meter. Ano lang? Number 2 is to evaluate each of the following and express in SI unit with the appropriate prefix. So, unsaan man eh? So, letter A is 50 millinewtons times 6 giganewtons. So, ito siya convert, di ba? 50 times 10 to the power of negative 3 newtons times 6 times 10 to the power of 9 newtons. Okay. So, simply multiply 300 million newtons squared. Take note, square kay newtons times newtons. And simply 0.3 times 10 to the power of 9 newtons squared. So to simplify it further, 0.3 times 10 to the power of 9 times 1 kilonewton per 1,000 newton and square. So na-square na ni, and then square po na. So 300 kilonewton squared. Mo na answer sa A. Okay? Sa B, multiply 400 millimeter times 0.6 mega newtons squared. Okay. So, unsa man na to convert sa 400 times 10 to the power of negative 3 meters times 0.6 times 10 to the power of 6 newtons squared. Answer dili, 1.44 times 10 to the power of 11. Ambot unsa na dyan nakadakon nga kuan. So, meters times newton squared. Nya unsa man ni? Kay 11 man ni, ato isbog og duha para mahimong 144 times 10 to the 9th meter newton squared, or finally you have 144 gigameter newton squared. So this is the answer of the second problem. So for our third example, for our third part, so C, 45 mega newton cube over, oh my gosh, 900 gigagram. GG. Okay. So, unsa may buhaton nato ato sa unahon pag simplify. Okay. So, ato buhaton is 45 times 10 to the power of 6. It is mega and newtons. And then, ato igawas ang cube over 900 GG, 900 kilogram. 10 to the 6 kilogram. Okay, so you have there, the answer is 50, tanaw na lang ko dali, times 10 to the power of 9 newton cube per kilogram. And since we have to convert this one into kilonewton cube, so what we have to do is to 10 to the 9th newton cube per kilogram and multiply this one by 1,000 newton equals to 1 kilonewton cube. So, maka-cancel na ni, mabilin kilonewton per kilogram. And we have there, the answer should be 50 kilonewton cube per kilogram. So, ingana lang kasayon. ingana kasayon kung magsige mong practice. So, dili mo maglibog na kung magsige mong practice. Kaya ako, wala man ko nag-practice, so naglibog jud ko. Okay? So, that is why it is very good to review. Salita. So, to wrap up this lesson for this, our third lesson, we already have discussed the primary and secondary dimensions. We also have discussed the different units that is widely used in the world. And lastly, we also have discussed some techniques and rules in solving problems. So I hope you have learned a lot of things for this day, and keep learning. God bless you and see you next week. Bye! My God!